Hey, Reef Builders, welcome to episode number 71 of the Reef Therapy Podcast. Today, we will do as we do and give an update and vent about anything going on in our personal reefing journeys, discuss some comments, and, of course, get to our guest tonight. My name is Remy. You know Raj. Let's get to know Sara Stevens. Sara, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Sara. I'm the Director of Animal Collections at Butterfly Pavilion, which is an AZA-accredited invertebrate zoo. So I get to work with all kinds of cool spineless critters, and I just get to do a job I love every day of my life.
Yeah, we got to talk at Aquashella Dallas, and I just find what you do fascinating. Obviously, you had a good relationship with Jake, and there are several videos that you guys have done together. I'll reference a couple of those as we get into the podcast a little bit. But where's Mark tonight? Mark is like IT project guy, so he's like, I have to hop on a call at 7:00 at night, and I was like, what job is this that you do? What are you doing?
Real work. He has to do real work.
Yeah.
Grown-up stuff.
Real work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotta make that money for another Regal, apparently.
Ooh.
I don't know, maybe too soon. Sorry guys, I apologize. Sara, what you drinking tonight?
Just a fat tire.
Fat tire. You gotta show it.
Gotta show it. Doesn't count if you don't
It's
show it.
It's in a koozie.
What kind of koozie is that? Did you make that?
It's a turtle one. No, it's just gotten a lot of love and care over the years.
It looks like it's
Little-
crocheted or something.
It's knitted. It's like a little sweater.
Okay. Raj, what do you got?
I had a couple of major fails with some local beers here, so I have pivoted to vino.
Okay. What flavor is that? A Pinot Noir? Is that a Malbec? What is that?
It is a
Red
cab.
blend.
It is a cab.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. I actually have a really good beer tonight. This is the King Sue from Toppling Goliath Brewing Company in Iowa. So they actually partner with the Field Museum in Chicago. So they have another IPA called Pseudo Sue, which is like their main one. It's won all these awards, and I think some of the money that they make off of this goes to the Field Museum. So it's really kind of cool. It's all based on the Sue, the Tyrannosaurus Rex at the Field Museum. So
That's awesome.
it's actually really good. It looks like orange juice. It's thick. So King Sue is like the double, and Pseudo Sue is just like a regular IPA. So
So it's
there's
an
definitely some
unfiltered
flavors in
IPA?
this. Yeah. It's as you can tell.
Yeah.
It's funny because it says what does it say on the can? It says something like there might be remnants, or there might be essentially there might be detritus in your beer.
Oh yeah, like don't drink the bottom like half inch or something like that.
Yeah.
I've seen beers like that before. They're like, yeah,
It's
just don't.
it's
Home
thick.
brews too. Like don't
Thick.
drink the bottom.
Yeah. So how's everybody doing? Raj, where are you at? What's going on here?
I'm at the beach. I'm on 30A,
Okay.
which is on the panhandle of Florida. Yeah.
Not so much of a secret anymore, huh? That 30A.
No, it used to be a lot quieter and cheaper, and now it's not so quiet, but it's still pretty nice. But we tend to move around now a little bit as the beaches get a little overrun. But yeah, it's a nice little break. It's a quick drive. I think. Well, if I didn't have to make as many stops as I do with kids, I think it takes us about 6 hours. When I did this by myself, I'd pull it off in about 4.5, maybe 5. So
Okay.
pretty quick.
Gotcha. Sara, we usually start this podcast with a little like vent session, a little therapy session. Do you have any tanks at home? Do you have any critters at home? Or does that all just stay at the Butterfly Pavilion?
I do have some critters. We actually have tanks, ironically, that are my husband's. Because when you do animal care as a job, coming home to it can be a little bit tough. That being said, in my current role, I've gotten to move away from animal care a little bit at work, and it's reigniting my passion for animal care at home. So I actually recently just got a lizard that I never thought I would get a lizard before, so I could build this really cool vivarium and playing around with the tanks, things like that.
What kind of
Usually
lizard is it?
small stuff. It's an emerald swift. So it's a smaller lizard, shorter lifespan. I figured I would like have a test lizard before I committed to some of like the 30, 40-year lizards or
Yeah.
reptiles, like the turtles your children inherit, things like that.
So what does your husband have? What kind of tanks does he have?
We have freshwater planted tanks, so mostly nanos. So we have lots of nano fish, small shrimp, things like that. Huge sucker for just a ton of nano fish in a large tank. That's my personal favorite type of exhibit. I love getting to see big schools of tiny things. Probably my favorite animal we have are our pygmy cories because when they all get schooling together with like 20 or 30 of them, it's fabulous.
Nice. Nice. Any issues going on with any of those freshwater tanks right now?
Algae. When isn't algae a problem? I feel like it's your go-to, right?
Yeah.
No matter how clean, how recently you did water changes, there's still algae
So does
somewhere.
he take care of the tanks, or do you have to pitch in?
Yeah, he does. Now, every once in a blue moon, if he's got a ton going on or I'm walking by, I might do some scrubbing or do some water changes. But he got really into it during the pandemic. I think a lot of people did. And so he really, they're his babies. And I just help provide some technical support here or there.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's kind of like when you're married to like a psychiatrist or a psychologist or something, you know, like
Some casual therapy.
My spouse is a professional and she is probably analyzing everything I do right now, you know.
Like, oh, are you sure you want to do that?
Yeah.
That's a choice.
Yeah. Raj, any progress on your tank?
No, I mean, I've been at the beach this whole week, so, I actually have a legit excuse that I haven't done anything to it. Yeah.
I love that.
Just great. I did think about the return pump, though.
Okay. Yeah. And what were your thoughts on that?
Well, somebody had recommended one of the Max Spec return pumps. I hadn't heard of it, so I was going to check that out, but haven't gotten around to Googling it yet. So that was the extent of that thought.
Okay. Yeah. All right. My new tank arrives tomorrow,
Woo!
which I'm very excited about.
What did you go with?
It is the Red Sea 625, which I did receive endless amounts of crap from Raj for not going with the bigger one, but didn't want the headache of trying to get it down the stairs. Although we did have a lot of comments of hacks that people have used, like making a sled to go down the stairs and things like that with a larger tank. So it's still big. It's 160 gallons, so it's still a large tank, and it will be still difficult to maneuver. But I don't know, 6-foot tank getting down that pivot. I just don't know if I could do it. So
you could do it.
I didn't want to. Man,
it's
too late
so
now.
Even if you
and then you do it, and it's great.
Even if you drop it, it would have been fantastic. Just the video reaction of it going. Boop, 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 boop.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you
this. Spectacular.
Right.
Yeah, if it arrives cracked or anything like that, and we have to send it back or we get a new one, then maybe I'll use that as a test and see if I could, afford 7 or 8 more inches and maybe get that down the stairs. So, but I'm super excited. It's a Red Sea 625, so it's a 5-foot tank, 160 gallons. I think it's like 26 high, 26 deep, and then 5 feet long. And it'll come with pretty much everything Red Sea offers: lights, the roller, skimmer, dosing pumps, everything. I mean, it's decked out. So
that's awesome. Jake loved that roller. That was his. Yeah. That was his roller. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know he's still got a couple at the studio. Yep. But yeah, I'm very excited because this will be the biggest tank I've ever had. I'm a nano guy, or I have been a nano guy over the years. So my biggest tank was 120, 115, and that was a fish only system. We've talked about it here on the podcast before. It was my fish only system that I had in Chicago. Had a really cool dog face puffer that I loved, and of course my Emperor Angel that I loved as well, and had to give those all up. But maybe those are both totally not the most reef safe in the world, but maybe I can get some more fish with some personality. So I'm excited to have a larger, playground, if you will. But that's all arriving hopefully when I'm at home tomorrow and not just my wife. Because I don't know if they drop them at the end of the driveway, or can you like tell them to slide it into the garage? Because that'd be nice.
It depends on who you get. A lot of times they just want to drop it at the end of the driveway and drive off. But if you get somebody that's cool, they'll bring it in. Do you have people that are going to show up, or
no?
Okay. Yep. Good strategy. Good.
Nailing it already. Fantastic. Great job.
Awesome planning.
Yeah.
Doing great.
Well, what I want to do is I want to kind of, my main friend here, Tyler, is of course on vacation in Mexico. Everybody's on vacation right now. But I wanted to rally him and a bunch of guys from the LFS, and get some guys over here to knock it out. And it's not ready. Like I still have to move tanks out of the way and stuff. So I got to get that squared away first. So my 4Runner might be hanging out on the driveway for the next couple weeks.
Having done many an 11th hour Hail Mary, you can pull it off.
Okay.
It's stressful, but you can do it. It's fine. A couple extra white or gray hairs, not a big deal.
Yeah. Like I said, I think it was after Aquashell at Dallas, we talked about how quickly those tanks go up and down. Like the aquarium gallery tank, that huge behemoth, I don't even know what the measurements are on that tank, but that can't be easy to fill with fish, all the things within like 24 hours. It's crazy. And then move it all again.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of do this out of order a little bit because I feel like we have been getting to our topics a little too late in the podcast instead of going straight from this to comments, then to the actual thing. Because we did have a comment that made me think, and I'll get to that after we talk with Sara and what she's about and all that stuff. But so I'm gonna mess with it. We'll see if this provides any extra commentary. So if you like this, let us know. If you don't like this, let us know. But Sara, I wanted to dig in because now that Mark's not here tonight, you're kind of filling in, and you're obviously a very interesting person. We got a chance to meet at Aquashell at Dallas for the first time, and I found one of the first videos that you and Jake did together, and I gotta say, it was odd for me to start with like, okay, well, what the hell is Jake doing at a Butterfly Pavilion right now? What could they possibly have to do with coral or reefing or any of that? And then he obviously showed the rescue corals, of the corals that you guys are doing triage on, and that was the beginning of a 3-year study, and I believe that was in 2020, the video that I'm referencing. So now we're on the end of that 3 years. Where is everything right now as far as like the Florida Reef Track project?
Yeah. That video, I remember it so fondly. I had no notice Jake was coming to do filming. It was like the day after we got in the coral. I'd been there since like 1, 2 a.m. It was a long day beforehand, but it was probably one of my favorite videos. That project in general it's interesting. So we had a 3-year commitment with the project. We've since re-upped our commitment. We're continuing holding the coral pretty much indefinitely until Florida's ready for them. The Florida Reef Tract is not necessarily better. The oceans in general aren't necessarily better, but there is some really cool bright spots within it all. Florida Aquarium has been able to transplant out some baby corals that were spawned with corals from the project, which is really cool. There's been collection of endemic corals, which are corals that survive the disease zone, and they're going to try and breed those coral with coral from that were pulled ahead of time, so healthy coral like we have, and try and create disease-resistant offspring. So we're not just putting healthy coral back into the ocean to combat a disease that they've never met and will probably die from. So still moving forward with it. The chances of the project ending anytime soon, not likely.
Yeah, it's tough. And just to, if you could give a brief synopsis of what this is for people that aren't aware. I mean, they're all Caribbean corals, right?
Yeah, so the AZA Florida Reef Track Rescue Project is a collaborative project within AZA zoos and aquariums. So basically in 2014, a mystery disease popped up just north of Miami at Port St. Lucie. And that disease was, they thought consistent with other Caribbean diseases at the time. So at first they didn't really give it much more attention than they would have any other disease. But what they soon found out was this disease was really contagious and impacted up to 22 different species of reef building coral, which is pretty unheard of. Most diseases tend to be fairly species specific. So this disease was moving at an unprecedented rate. It was spreading really quickly. Between 2014 and 2019, it hit all the way down into the Keys. That's 360 miles of reef for that to traverse. So a really big deal with how rapidly it moved. In 2018, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, NOAA, Florida government kind of acknowledged that they couldn't stop the disease. Their measures weren't working. So they basically decided to try and triage as many coral out ahead of the disease zone as possible. The goal was to get 5,000 coral out of the ocean ahead of this disease. They got just short of 2,000.
Wow. That's crazy.
But they were able to spread these coral to different institutions, and these coral have enough variety of genetics where there's still a lot of hope. And this particular project was really collaborative and really just kind of utilized people in the best ways possible. So we have zoos and aquariums caring for the coral. We've got universities working on trying to identify the disease, and pharmaceuticals. And even I think at some point they had like US military, like Navy swimming out and on some of their drills doing checks on coral and things like that. So it was wonderfully collaborative, and I think is a method they're going to use in the future, just following this kind of project protocol. Because it was so successful in so many different ways. Even though they didn't stop the disease, they still were able to save the coral.
Gotcha. I guess not to play devil's advocate, but is this our own fault? Like, is this because of humans? Do we know that's where this came from and that's why we should stop this? Or is the disease just something that would be naturally occurring anyway and might wipe out a bunch of things if we didn't intervene? But maybe that's just nature. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely examples of nature wiping out a bunch of people. Exhibit bubonic plague, right?
Yeah.
That being said, I think that we can acknowledge that the human impact on our oceans is fairly well studied, that there is an impact. And usually the impact is in increasing stressors. So it can be runoff and eutrophication. It can be raising pH in the ocean, things like that. Temperatures rising. All of these things are stressors, right? And when we're stressed out, our body's immune system starts to degrade. It's the same for these animals.
Makes sense.
So even if this disease had existed without all of those stressors, there's a chance it would have killed some coral. We're just trying to save this kind of national treasure. The Florida Reef Track is a national treasure. Like, it's our big coral reef here in the continental United States. We don't have the Great Barrier Reef right off our coast. This is our reef to save. So I think it's important, even if we can't exactly pinpoint that this is a man-made issue, I think there's enough kind of issues synergizing together that we can acknowledge that helping is not the worst thing in the world. And we can try and protect this resource for, our kids and their kids, and let them be able to see these incredible coral. And they're cool coral. Like, they're not brown blobs. These are cool coral and deserve just as much of a chance as any other reef.
Yeah, I know that. Is it Worldwide Coral's old farm that the Florida Reef Track kind of took over? I know I've seen some video. I would love to go there and tour it, but some of those colonies are just like something you don't see in the hobby. Well, a lot of them, you can't have in the hobby, but just gigantic colonies of corals in these vats. It's just it's fun to see.
Yeah, the goal was to try and pull sexually mature coral out of the ocean with the idea that they would try for sexual reproduction. So usually when you think of coral propagation with Indo-Pacific coral in the hobby, a lot of that's going to be fragging. So it's asexual reproduction. Those are clones. What we're looking at with this project is we really want to be creating like unique individual coral, because the more unique the coral are, the higher chance they'll be able to have mutations that make them survive these diseases. Diversity is really good in an ocean. You don't want to have all the same thing, because one disease wipes everybody out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the big coral and just the diversity of the coral is wild. And they weren't kept in zoos and aquariums really either. So when we got the green light for this project, there was a ton of work that had to be done to figure out all of the unique needs, because these coral they truly are unique from Indo-Pacific coral in their needs, their finickiness, their nuance, all that stuff had to pretty much be relearned because nobody's really had them since the 70s.
What was most impressive for me, seeing all of the facilities that have these corals and are part of the Reef Track project, was the biosecurity measures that have been taken, right? So I don't think people really, well, I know people don't really think of that and they don't know about it. So can you tell us more about that? Like what exactly everybody is doing to protect not only these corals, but protect the corals that you have in your facilities?
Yeah, biosecurity was a huge issue. Originally, when we signed on for the project, they didn't know what was causing the disease, so that made biosecurity even more of an issue. That being said, we still really don't know what's going on with this disease. Even years later, trying to do histopathology on a coral is a nightmare. But from a biosecurity standpoint, we had to make sure, because there was originally a chance our coral that we received for this project would go back into the ocean. So they could never come in contact with Indo-Pacific coral, because there was always the chance that a disease that the Indo-Pacific coral were immune to and just carrying could become the new disease to go into the reef track. That meant that we have all completely different utensils. You can't work the tank if you've been working Indo-Pacific tanks without a shower, basically. My arms got dried out like nobody's business because I had to spray 90% isopropyl alcohol on my arms every time before I put them in the tank. Even getting the tank set up. You were talking about how much of a pain it is to fill up a tank and then have to empty it. We had to do bleach baths. We had to do perioxyacetic acid baths on the system before we could even put the coral in it. And so it was just days of filling and draining and filling and draining. And our corals are out on exhibit because we actually had no capacity to have a biosecure system in our behind the scenes spaces. So we decided to put it out on exhibit for our guests to see as a self-contained unit, which had its own stressors. Dealing with brand new coral that are coming from a disease zone, that are all beat up right in front of guests. It's like all of the things you never want to put out in the open. But it was important enough for us to do this project that we felt the risk was worth it, and the stress dreams were worth it.
I think Shed has something like that where you can kind of get a behind the scenes look of what they're doing with like the lab coral, you know, not the sexy display coral and stuff like that. But and I like that. And I would imagine that most people are, to some degree, who aren't, you know, science nerds and love this stuff like we do. But, you know, to some degree, it's like, oh, okay, there's something more going on here than just whatever I'm seeing in a display tank, you know. The biosecurity is crazy because, yeah, every single one of those tanks, I'd imagine they're still using the same equipment that Worldwide had, right? They just left it all there. So you'd have to sterilize all of that stuff. Yeah, that's I didn't even think about that. That's crazy.
And so every single piece of coralline, vermitid snails, anything that was remotely organic had to be fully removed before you even started the bleach dips. So that took things like that would take hours of scraping, and it's one of those things where it was so easy, even as somebody very aware of the biocontrols and very aware of all of the things I had to be doing every day, to almost put my hand in an Indo-Pacific tank. Like, so it just, you have to completely change your mindset that every morning I would come in and I'd have somebody else working the tanks in the morning. Like, I was just focused on this one system because I could not risk cross-contamination.
Yep. Yeah. And I know some of these institutions have locked rooms. Like, it is totally separated from everything else. And it's like this biohazard, you know, lab that has these corals. And it's super cool to see that level of biosecurity and care taken when dealing with these. I was super, super impressed, and I was not expecting that at all. And I even know, you know, like I know the details about the program, so part of that, but I still didn't expect it. And I was still shocked to see how seriously everybody really took it. It was really cool.
It's just one ocean, right? So
It is until it
Yeah,
comes to diseases.
for now.
for now,
For
yeah.
now.
I wanted to. I had asked you a little bit earlier, Sarah, about what you talked about at Aquashella, because as you were kind of running some details in or putting some details into your PowerPoint, I glanced over your shoulder a couple times, and I was like, "Oh, that's super interesting." Because now you have these corals in your care. What now? Like, you gotta heal them up. You gotta make them fat and happy. How do you do that?
A lot of TLC. One of my favorite things about the videos that we did with Jake were how drastically the coral changed in just like, I think it was 2 months in between the first video and the second video. So when they came in, they were brown and skinny. So the tissue was really clinging to the skeleton. There was abrasions and all kinds of damage. Just when you're shipping large colonies like the ones we received, it's hard to avoid full damage. And so I had a weird, fortunate thing, which was really unfortunate in some ways, was that we got our coral February 2020, and our doors closed to the public March 13th, 2020. So I had 3 months where we were fully closed as a facility, and I could work on this coral I probably spent 6 hours a day just focused on those corals specifically. I would go in with dental tools and I'd clean and scrape away bits of algae, pests, things like that. I was looking at every coral every single day, all sides of it, really just getting in there and feeding them like two or three times a day even, and just tons of water changes, just trying to perk them up, moving them around constantly to get the right spots. It was just this weird, it was all consuming. There was no way I was not going to make sure these corals bounced back. Like I couldn't not put all that effort
What kind of
into it.
food are you using there?
We call it a reef blend. So it's kind of a mix of like powdered foods, like we use reef roids. I'll use Oyster Feast by Reef Nutrition, dosing amino acids like acropower, phytoplanktons, and then usually I prefer Calanus to Mysis personally for coral, especially smaller coral. Something kind of weird we found with some of the coral was that even the Mysis was the skeleton of the Mysis, like the chitin, could have potentially been causing some damage to the mouths. So I switched to Calanus to be safe. Also, Calanus has this really cool side effect of inciting feeding responses in coral that are just terrible at getting feeding responses from, like sun coral, things like that. Try Calanus. It works like a dream. I even did pellets at one point. I had this one coral, this Eusmelia, which is now my baby, because it came in looking terrible, and I just babied the heck out of it, and now it's quadrupled in size. And I just had to leave pellets on its mouths at one point, and that worked great. Like it finally started opening up after almost a month of seeing 0 tentacles, 0 feeding response. That was how I got it to open up, and once I got it opened up, then I could start feeding it.
Gotcha. So kind of just a buffet of different things.
Just a buffet.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great when you're not 100% sure what an animal's going to prefer. Feed a hodgepodge and then really observe and then scale back as you figure out what's being consumed, what isn't, and go from there.
Very good. While we were talking at Aquashella Dallas, I remember you telling some stories, because while you do have corals there, you also have a lot of scary ass bugs. You were telling us a story about a breach. Can you tell that story with us right now, or is that
I'm trying to remember what story
you had it. I believe it was an intern that you were telling us about that had reported that one of the
yeah, I can tell that story.
Okay.
So we work with a lot of really, really crazy animals. One of the animals that when I first started at Butterfly Pavilion, my background's marine biology. I knew nothing about bugs. I was actually terrified of spiders, and my desk was in a room with like 200 tarantulas. but the more I've come to work there and learn and love them, I've grown a huge respect and appreciation for tarantulas. I have my own, but the one animal that I have just had a fear instilled in me is centipedes. Big centipedes.
They're creepy.
They are. It's not even creepiness. I could take a creepy animal. I've got tons of creepy animals. It is that they are. We call them rage noodles because they're, they're just like filled with this incarnate rage. I don't know how to describe it. And it's something you can only get if you've interacted with a large centipede. Like the little ones in your garden, they're fine. They're easy. Yeah. These guys are like this big, and they're highly venomous. It's not going to kill you, but it's not a fun time. And they're fast. They're lightning fast. They're smart. Like you don't think of a bug as smart, but they can find any hole, any crevice, anything they can get out, and they can chew through plastic. So these are like not a fun critter to escape, and they're your most likely critter to try to escape.
Yeah.
So we were preparing for every October, we do this really cool spider takeover of our facility, and we were preparing the exhibits, and I just get a call on our radio, which is our code for an escaped animal in our rearing room. That's where we house all of our critters. And it was perfectly per protocol, and I was like, oh, that's weird, because it was after hours, nothing should be open, and it was our intern who reported it, and I ran in, and he's just standing there watching this little centipede strolling along the floor, just keeping an eye on it. And it was fine. I mean, he didn't bite or anything when I tried to catch him, but I was, oh my gosh, it's like the one animal I never want to escape. And to this day, like I looked all over its enclosure. I checked for any gaps, any like weird, like it just didn't get closed properly or anything like that. I still have no idea how that little guy got out. Like they teleport or phase through. I don't know, but it was, yeah, that's my one least favorite. But that's why you have to wear closed-toed shoes in our rearing space. You know, centipedes.
That's a good point.
Rage noodles.
Rage noodles. Yeah, I remember when the St. Louis Aquarium first opened, they were giving tours to media, and it was a construction zone, and I was wearing sandals and shorts and everything, and they're like, yeah, sir, you really can't come in here. We're just not going to allow it. And I was like, awesome. Just, spent the entire afternoon taking off, whatever. But what was nice about it is because I was an idiot and I didn't follow protocol, they gave me a private tour like 2 weeks later. I was like, okay, maybe I should be more rebellious.
They rewarded you.
Yeah, they rewarded my bad behavior. But yeah, do you have any other fun stories? I just feel like dealing with the public. There's always stuff.
You had something
right?
escape while the public is there and like get out into the crowd or anything like that?
I mean, so we have a huge butterfly conservatory, which is 7,000 square feet. We have double doors for containment, things like that. But we have 1,600 to 2,000 butterflies in there. So our most likely thing to escape is a butterfly.
Yeah, but they're butterflies.
But the funny part.
We need something cool.
Funny part about a butterfly is the code gets called and just like poof, a door opens and just all of these people run out with nets. So it's like 20 staff members with nets just running after this butterfly. So I feel like from a guest standpoint, that's actually highly entertaining. Any door.
What's the code?
Possibly be.
Please tell me the code is something entertaining.
No, it's like 10-7.
Oh, so disappointing.
Right?
Yeah.
I know. Sorry. No, we do a bunch of, we have a really cool community science project where basically random members of the public can actually get trained to do monitoring of butterflies in like the Front Range. We're trying to expand it to all of Colorado. But there's a lot of around the nation. If you like butterflies and you like walking outside and you want to participate in science with very little effort, butterfly monitoring, way to go.
Nice. I'm trying to think of I had another question. I think it was about spawning though. To go back to the corals, do like the Florida Reef Track corals, Indo and Great Barrier Reef, I know that there are different times of year when they do spawn, but when the Florida Reef Track corals spawn, is that all one event?
No, so the different species will spawn at different months. So you'll get a couple that like a cluster. Usually it tends to be in the fall. So like September, October, November, those are really good times for spawning. Um, there's some that spawn at different times of the year. They spawn kind of throughout the year and like usually like spring and fall. Uh, but they'll try to separate themselves because they don't want to be spawning at the same time.
Hmm.
And it's crazy how they synchronize. Coral spawning is wild. They like a coral who has no eyes and no brain tracks the moon and the light and is able to time it so that them and any other coral in the ocean in that area of the same species all spawn at the same time within like minutes of each other. There's like boom, 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 boom. Like I've seen less coordination in a group of college kids than these coral that have no brain, no eyes. And
I don't know.
spawning can be really.
I've seen some pretty impressive coordination when it comes to college students, and not really reproduction, but the. Never mind.
Yeah, I picked a port.
Oh, but let's get back. Let's get back to coral spawning. Okay.
But the thing I was going to say around that was, you have these animals that are so keyed into these cues, these environmental cues, that's why spawning can be really tricky. Because if you mess up any of these cues at any point throughout the year, that can lead to your coral not spawning. So it's a whole year of effort, and then fingers crossed that you're not like, oh crap, the one time somebody came in and turned on the lights and they shouldn't have turned on the lights, and that screwed up our entire spawn for a year. Is stressful.
Yeah.
But it's really cool.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of reading in like the Jamie Craig's articles and Rich Ross. After we talked to him, I was really kind of moved to actually try this and actually try it at home and get a system designated for it. Jamie had commented on one of our reef therapy videos, and he said that he's just like teaching his kids in the kitchen about spawning. Like he's got corals spawning in the kitchen. So, I mean, I feel like he's probably one of the more, obviously he's the most advanced when it comes to doing this on a hobbyist level. But I feel like moving this down the line a little bit and just showing that it can be done at the hobbyist level. I mean, Raj is probably sick of me talking about this because I feel like I bring it up in every single episode, but it's I want to do it like as something that I truly want to, and with multiple species. I think it was Parker's Reef, another YouTube channel. They just did a video with monsoon in Australia where they have a whole scully. Like they have like 200 scullies, and they're trying to get those to all spawn, which I think is awesome. Like it's that kind of advancement that the hobby can provide. Why not get us all on board? And let's do this,
No, and I love that. And honestly, like most of the equipment that these facilities are using is hobbyist equipment. It's the equipment that hobbyists have pushed and pushed and pushed for that allow these aquariums and institutions to achieve these results. So it is not outside of the grasp of hobbyists at all. I highly recommend anybody who's interested in it to give it a go. It's really cool. And it's one of those, seeing a coral spawn in real life is like one of those like once in a lifetime things to see. And if you could do that in like your living room, 10 out of 10, it's the coolest thing in the world. That's something that we thought was outside of our grasp for decades. And the fact that it is so accessible and easy, I'm a big proponent that everybody should feel like they have a seat at the table of science. Like science isn't this big institution that's up on a hill. Like we're all doing science every day. That's what keeping an aquarium is. That is you doing science. You're doing chemistry, you're doing biology, you're doing engineering and plumbing. Like all of these things are science in their own ways. And I highly advocate for hobbyists to be pushing the envelope of what they're doing and track it. Like that's the biggest difference usually is science tracks it. So we have records of it. But if you're tracking that, like you don't have to work at a big institution to publish white papers or publish articles or share your knowledge or information, especially in this day and age. So I'm all for everybody in their house just being like spawning random coral. Like that's That's like community science at its
It's
best.
the most self-sustaining hobby at that point, right? If you can get
Oh,
everybody doing that, we don't have to,
absolutely.
and take in from the ocean and all that. It's just kind of staying within, and it's
And
not fragging. It's the sexual reproduction. That's awesome.
yeah, you increase the chance of getting something nobody in the world has. So
Yeah.
for those people who want to be like collectors, the moment you spawn your own coral and you settle them out and you grow them up, you have a coral nobody in the world has.
Don't tell them that. They will start naming things now.
You can name it whatever you want.
Stop it. Stop it. You got some mad scientists right now like, man, if I could just name my own coral legit, new release.
Yeah.
New release. It's coming out.
New release. Yeah.
New release, new strain.
It's super hot. Do you have anything else you want to touch on? As far as, because I know you guys are expanding. That's a longer project for you guys, but we talked about that last time as well.
Yeah. So we're currently in a capital campaign. So if there's anybody who has deep pockets and really loves invertebrates, feel free to let me know. But we're currently in a capital campaign. Our facility opened in 1995. We're in a 32,000 square foot building that we have rapidly outgrown, especially with all the research and conservation projects that we do. And so our new facility will be breaking ground on hopefully in 2025, with opening to the public in 2027. And the goal will be to increase our footprint to about 80,000 something square feet with a huge ocean biome. We're talking about having a coral lab in that biome to help with restoration and reproduction efforts. And just like, it'll just be an ode to invertebrates. They're 97% of all animal species, and we'll finally be able to kind of give them the wonderful focus and attention that they deserve.
How much do you need?
I think currently the goal is 55 million and we're 24.5 million ish there. So we're almost 50%.
So you need 30. Remy's got that in his sofa cushions. He was just telling me the other day.
Gosh,
Perfect.
Yeah.
I hate you. I hate so much.
I'll put you in touch
so
with
much
our
hatred
donor
for you.
relations team.
Have them reach out to Remy for a donation.
Jeez.
We'll name it the Bahama Llama Butterfly Pavilion.
Yeah, no offense, but if I had $30 million, I probably wouldn't be sitting here with you guys.
Son of a bitch.
I'd probably be
What
sending
a
you
jerk.
Lamborghini
That
pictures
is-
and stuff, Raj.
That is dirty. I'm offended. Do you feel slighted,
Yes.
Sarah? Wow.
Absolutely.
And
Just
you
the
call yourself
most
passionate.
offended I've ever been. And I'm friends with Raj. He's always offensive.
Yeah. So 30 million to go. That's actually not that much. If
See?
you get
No, it's
31 millionaires, right? You'd be good.
Exactly. And we've
All
got a
good there.
couple years to go for sure.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite saltwater invertebrates?
Oh, that's a good question.
Do you guys have that that shrimp exhibit still?
Oh, the camel shrimp? Yeah, we
Yeah.
still have the camel shrimp. Yeah, I will say probably my favorite animal we don't have, which I've always just had a secret little love for, are nautilus.
Oh yeah.
I think, yeah, they're just like a really cool, incredible animal, and they're like the dumbest of the cephalopods. They're not that smart. They're like the
pandas.
dumb cousin in the corner. Yeah, exactly. They're clumsy like pandas. They need a lot of conservation help. I think they breed more than pandas,
Do they?
but not in captivity. That's a good point, actually.
I don't know.
They're like
Greg-
the pandas of the ocean.
Greg does a lot of work with them up there in Des Moines at Central
Yes,
Campus.
yeah.
We should actually talk to him about that stuff. It's fascinating.
The nautilus research is incredible. I think he helped discover 2 new species of nautilus just like within the last year or so. It's so interesting, and it's the work with nautilus and how imperiled they are. Like, I think a lot of people don't realize how threatened nautilus are because their shells are so highly valued
Right.
and coveted. It's not even the living animal; it's the shell.
Huh.
And that's another thing when it comes to invertebrates that a lot of people don't realize is like how much illegal trade there is in invertebrates. It is a wild rabbit hole if you want to run down it.
Invertebrates?
Yeah, illegal invertebrate poaching. We have a set of pinned butterflies. They're Queen Alexandria. butterflies that were confiscated by U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and they're not in good condition, so nobody can steal them. But a good conditioned pair could go for like 10 grand on the black market.
Not alive.
Not alive, dead. Nobody wants them alive.
Alexander. I'm looking.
That's just insane.
Alexander.
They're beautiful.
I really,
Yeah.
really
It's
hate poaching and poachers and that whole entire market.
Yeah. And it's tricky. So when it comes to poaching, a lot of times, if you give people the opportunity to do better, they will do better. Especially in areas where you have a lot of these animals that are poached or endangered or threatened. Usually there are socioeconomic conditions that encourage that.
Yeah.
So there's
Sharks
ways that,
and-
yeah, right. If it's cheaper for them to just cut the fin off than it is to bring the whole shark back. Like if there's no incentivization to do the right thing, people historically don't do the right
Yeah,
thing.
but you know, it's not the
in that.
it's not the uneducated or people without money that are driving it, right? It's the wealthy
That
and it's
is
the
true.
educated that are demanding that they want these $10,000 butterflies. They want this tiger skin and the shark fin soup, rhino horn, all kinds of random nonsense.
And they're never the ones who pay for it. It is usually the people who are desperate and doing these things out of desperation that are the biggest cause. Like they're the ones who casualties of the poaching industry outside of obviously the animals.
Yeah.
I've got a crazy story about an invertebrate poaching situation. It's crazy because it's ridiculous. So we tried to work, back in probably like 2017, 2018, there was this tree snail in Maui in Hawaii. So a lot of people don't realize that Hawaii used to have a ton of endemic, so native tree snails that have since been wiped out due to invasive species. And there were 6 of these little snails left, 6 in the world.
Wow.
And they all lived on one tree.
Jeez.
And they had like little electric fences around this tree because the main predator of this snail was another snail. It was the rosy wolf snail. It was the Newcomb's tree snail. And we were in talks with them of trying to help them. They had this huge reserve, and they wanted to see if they could find more of these snails. That they just knew of this one population, but they thought there were more. So we were in talks with them about this, but they brought up at one point that there was this one guy on the island who was trying to find these snails in this like 8,000 hectare reserve to poach them. Ugh. Because he just wanted the snails. But it was this one guy. They knew who he was. And they couldn't like do anything because he hadn't actually done it yet. Isn't that ridiculous that you know the guy trying to poach the snails you're taking care of?
Insane.
It was the craziest thing. And the only reason he wanted them was because he wanted to have them. He just wanted to have them.
So there's no market for it. He just like wanted it as a collector.
Just wanted them.
So what happened? Did they get him?
No, I think he's still running around not finding the snails. It's one tree in a very large space, and they're very protective of the location of it. We weren't able to get any funding to support that project, even though we worked through with multiple grants trying to find money. And that's a big thing with invertebrates. They're not the sexiest animals in the world, so a lot of times they can be highly imperiled, but you can't find the resources to protect them.
Wow. That's some education right there. Seriously, I had no idea. Like it's just it's like the first time that I found out that the masked angel was $10,000 a fish. I'm like, that's insane. And then you find out, okay, well they're super deep, and divers can't be down there for that long, so that's why you're paying for the labor to bring them back up or whatever. Now I think they're being aquacultured at this point, or bred in captivity, but. Yeah, there's just so much of that you don't know about, and that's crazy. Like the nautilus and the snails, that's wild. The butterflies, are they gone, or are they still out there? They're not extinct, are they?
I don't think the Queen Alexandria are extinct, but they're pretty close to it, I believe.
Are they
I'm
large?
trying to think of which one. Oh yeah, they're like this big. They're huge.
Okay.
There's a reason they're called birdwings. They're one of the largest species of butterfly in the world.
Gotcha.
So the males have incredibly vibrant coloration. The females are very large. And actually, the birdwing butterflies are really cool, not just because of how large and pretty they are. We actually have a project. So we've been working with Indonesia, or in Indonesia, to start a butterfly farm with the end goal of rearing birdwing butterflies to try and flood the market with captive, reared, and bred birdwing.
That's cool.
So, and then the end goal of the butterfly farm is, so we would raise a variety of butterflies to support butterfly houses and things like that. But the profits of the farm will eventually go to support ranger salaries in the adjacent nature preserve that has orangutans and Sumatran rhinos. So we're big believers that invertebrate can be very economical. So we like to utilize profits or utilize invertebrates to help larger, more charismatic megafauna in any way we can.
Gotcha. What's the average lifespan of one of those butterflies?
That's a great question. So usually we would say 2 to 4 weeks is an average lifespan for a butterfly, just because there's vastly different lifespans depending on species.
Yeah.
So like some butterflies, 7 days once they're an adult.
Wow.
Some butterflies we've actually in our conservatory, if you come visit, you can help us track butterfly lifespan. And we found one of our butterflies had lived almost 11 months. So
that's cool.
And that's another kind of way for people to get involved in our exhibit. So you can scan a QR code, snap photos of tagged butterflies, and submit it. And our staff look through all of those and use that to track what our butterflies are doing, how long they're living. And it's a fun way to get interested in animal behavior and the collection. And it really helps our team because we don't have to do all the work of getting all those photos, because the more eyes, the better.
So you want us to do your job for you. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely.
And you want $30 million? Wow.
Man.
Yes.
Wow.
I'm already a cashier on the side. I got to check myself out at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
So much extra work.
What is this world coming to?
But it's a great opportunity to become a zookeeper, and everybody wants to become a zookeeper when they're a kid.
That's true.
Or chase butterflies, whatever you're feeling.
See, I can see like with koi going for, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they live for 25 to 35, 40, 50 years sometimes. I get that. This is like it. You can have a butterfly for 3 months, and I get that probably the appeal is just to hang it on the wall, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Look behind me. These are all sustainably collected butterflies. But
that's what all the poachers say.
But yeah, I mean, most of the appeal of invertebrates is, particularly like the pin specimen, is the long term. It's almost like an art piece. It's like, think of it that way. I feel like it's more like an art piece. Like animals being poached can be living art, or just like that collector mindset. But a lot of times, like for myself, I know I like my butterfly specimens because I find them very beautiful. They're very beautiful animals. And that's weird to some people.
No, but I think that's why most of the poaching occurs anyway, right? You want a Bengal tiger skin because you think it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing is there's some things you can do sustainably. There's some animal collection that can be sustainable. It can inject money into local economies. It can be done correctly with appropriate regulations and following appropriate protocols. You're limiting as much risk to the ecosystem as a whole as possible. Whereas there's certain things that will never be able to happen. You can't sustainably collect them because their populations are too few. I think that's a good reason, like, to support conservation, right? Yeah. You want that thing? Well, if there's 100 million tigers, you could finally get that tiger rug you always wanted.
Yeah. That's weird to say.
I know.
It's like a weird thing to say out loud.
You're like, I'm going to edit that out later. But no.
Let's quote her on that.
Oh my gosh.
But like you said, it makes sense. You want to flood the market with whatever, so it doesn't become this big ordeal anymore. You said
take away the main driver.
Yeah.
And so you can do it more sustainably in a way that isn't having that direct impact.
Sure.
I think telling people no isn't going to stop it. you have to figure out what is actually the driver of these things and either try to reduce that driver or reduce the impacts of that use on the environment as a whole. I would love to live in a perfect world where like conservation was at the forefront of everybody's mind, all the ecosystems were happy, like everything was functioning the way it should. But it's not the world we live in. And I think trying to be as realistic as possible is a really big way you can make a difference. And also not get bogged down about the things you can't fix. Because that fatigue is a really big thing too, of like, well, if everything's broken, why do I have to do anything to solve it? It's like, well, if you take off little bites here or there, you do what little impact you can. If we're all doing little things.
Yeah.
That makes
and I think we've done a pretty good job of that within our lifestyle, right? We everybody frags their corals and spread those around so that the coral conservation side of it is pretty big. You know, that proliferated nicely throughout this industry. Fish breeding. I mean, how many home hobbyists started doing or breeding clownfish? You know, I mean, that's
absolutely
so much of that going on. And now they're trying other fish. So I think we have a lot of it. I think overall we do a pretty good job of it. And obviously there's things that we need to learn and we need to do a better job of, but that's always going to be the case.
Yeah. And this none of what I'm saying is an indictment on the hobby, because I actually do agree with you, Raj. I think the hobby has done a phenomenal job to try and ensure that they are doing the best they can with the resources available. And I love anytime I hear somebody trying to breed something that nobody else has bred, and like they're like in their home tank and they manage to get the first of something. I think that drive to strive for better is what makes the aquarium hobby so great. Is it's a huge community of people who consistently are striving for better, and it's a force to be reckoned with. That is absolutely impressive.
For sure. Yeah, my 2 clownfish that I raised up from eggs, I caught them cleaning today, and I was like, I think, is it about 2 years? Have I had them for about 2 years? They might be getting to that point. Ooh. So we might close the loop here. And I think a lot of people. So the first one didn't come from my breeding pair. It came from Kathy Leahy, who is a breeder in town here. She does angelfish and all those kinds of cool fish. But it came from her Ocellaris clowns that have been spawning for years, and then the second one came from mine. So they're not in the same family. I know there's a lot of that going on in the clownfish world. Okay, but if they do end up, spawning, and I just think that's so cool. That all happened in this room. You know what I mean? I know you guys are very used to that kind of thing, but for me, this is, that's really cool.
Yeah, but that's it.
Starts happening.
It is
coral.
cool.
But that's it, yeah. I don't think you get used to that though. I think any time that you are able to do something like that, like it's still that spark of joy when you're like, oh my god, like I helped create this.
Yeah.
Or I helped keep this alive. I mean, you shouldn't be helping create it if it's clownfish.
I saved their lives from their parents. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I intervened when mom and dad were going to kill them.
Yeah.
But I think that joy, it never really goes away. And that's the thing that keeps people coming back in this hobby.
Yeah.
Is just that joy.
We need to get Mark doing some spawning projects or something, because I'll lead into this. I don't know if you saw this comment, Raj, but there's a guy that said, or girl, I don't know who this is per se. Klompenstopper said, really enjoy the conversation aspect of reef therapy, but it can get a little Eeyore-like pining about the past, slightly negative parts of the hobby. I think it might be nice to have a loose topic to sort of flow back into, something more positive, more purposeful. I suppose you did have that coral list. He's referring to the last episode that we have. I do like Mark, his insights, but he can be a bit gloomy. And I think that he's pointed that out a couple of times too. He's like, I don't mean to, drag on the hobby again, but yeah, I think there's things like this where you go into it and like I'm we talked to Taras at Top Shelf Aquatics. Have you ever met Taras, Sarah?
I believe so. I haven't had an opportunity to in-depth talk.
Yeah,
But
he's like he's their phytoplankton guy. And
Oh, yeah.
I have not seen that level of enthusiasm for something in this hobby since probably Jake, honestly. And it was so nice because I feel like there's so many doom and gloom. This is how we used to do it, or, kind of harping on beginners and all of this stuff. And it's like, gosh, we just need to promote the positivity so that we can incite some of that, inspirational stuff that gets people to, I want to progress the hobby. I want to be the first at something. So I don't know. That kind of brought that up, but hopefully Mark's not on this podcast, so we're just throwing him under the bus right now, but
He's the full problem. I'll be your sunny replacement. It's fine. No big deal.
Anyways, let's see what we got here. I'm going to go through some comments here. I do want to say my favorite invert in the saltwater hobby is the pom-pom crab. So just throwing that out there.
Solid choice.
Yeah.
Solid choice.
And if you were going to say something like, man, pom-pom crabs are being poached for their anemones, man.
Just your heart would have broken.
Oh, yeah. Can you imagine what a story that would be? That's a finding. That's a Pixar short right there.
Anemones.
A crab just walking around with his real claws, like
who are they?
Wow. Anyways, NSB Reef says, I sent Raj on a goose chase. Sweet baby Jesus is brewed by Dewclaw, not Sweetwater. Sorry for the confusion. Did you end up finding that,
I have
Raj?
not, because I was scouring Sweetwater because he said it was a Sweetwater beer. And I was like, I've had every single one. I have every single one. So now I have to restart. But I didn't find a Sweet Baby Jesus beer, regardless of brand anyway. So there's a couple of big spots locally that I need to get to find it. This thing better be good.
Yeah.
If you sent me on this wild goose chase and the beer sucks, it's on.
Just find any beer that says Jesus in the title,
It's an analogy for something.
Yeah, right. Dustin says, Rami, I put my 6x3 by 2 foot tank in my basement. We built a sled for it. We kind of mentioned this earlier. With a lip on the front. We used foam under it, held it on with ratchet straps.
Yes.
And we also used suction cups to carry it on and off the sled. We had 5 or 6 people come over to help. Now that's a 6 foot tank. So that's a beast. He said, this is the point that I wanted to talk about. Is he said, I tried to have a moving company come, but they were hesitant. Aquarium maintenance companies wanted $2,000. And I think that might be I haven't called any moving companies because I think we can manage this, but I would imagine that's probably something that they run into a lot, where it's like, oh, I need you to move an aquarium, and they're like, yeah, dog, we only do refrigerators.
Yep. I know here in Atlanta there's one moving company that will take it on. They know what they're doing with the aquariums. They've done a bunch of them, so they'll do it. It's going to be spicy, but they'll do it. Most people that have larger tanks will either get a bunch of their buddies together or call one of the local service companies and just have them do it.
Yeah. So I'm just going to get
we had to hire a company for our Florida tank. We had to get it into the facility because it was like a 300-gallon, but it was like this weird stair step tank. So it was like impossible to carry, super heavy. And we had to get a company that had like the tiniest forklifts in the world to get around like all of our stuff. And it was impressive watching people who move stuff all the time comparatively to like our normal efforts.
Yeah.
So, if you can find a company, they're sometimes worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, I would imagine any LFS around here knows that company if they aren't the ones that do it. Yeah. But I definitely am going to be hopping over there to grab some suction cups. I know they've got those. Rent those out for the day for sure. Gunpowder says, I live in St. Cloud, Minnesota. I didn't think anybody would ever mention anything about St. Cloud on YouTube or social media. Glad y'all enjoy Minnesota. We had talked about last time how my family would go on vacation to this place called Longville, Minnesota, and it's a tiny town, and it's surrounded by like Girl Lake and Boy Lake and Woman Lake. And
Solid naming.
Leech Lake is like the big lake that's in that area.
Does it have leeches?
I don't know. I would imagine like most lakes in Minnesota have leeches, right?
Yeah, okay. Then that's advertising correctly.
Yeah. Just they're bigger because it's a bigger lake. I don't know. We were talking about how clear the water is and everything, and then there's another guy that said, yeah, if you can get around the bird-like mosquitoes in Minnesota, fantastic. But yeah, Longville's known for, Sarah, Longville's known for this thing called, they do turtle races. So they rent out turtles in the middle of this town square, and then all the kids get into the middle of the bullseye and release the turtles, and whichever, whoever turtle goes to the end of the bullseye first wins. So I thought it's like a core memory that I will always remember. I think I bought my first Swiss Army knife too. I did not. My turtle sucked.
That tracks.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's like the
a rare Sarah burn.
That's right.
Not the best bird. You didn't even notice.
I didn't notice. It's more of the turtle's fault, but whatever.
You didn't give an appropriate pep talk for that turtle to feel confident in
Come
itself.
on, go to your home. You want to get back into the wheelbarrow where you were when I first got you with all the other turtles? Let's go. Alaska Reef Guy says, Raj, fellow photographer here, sounds like you're going on some epic photo trips. Where can I see your work? Everybody wants to see Raj's stuff, but
what, the photography stuff?
And your tank and everything.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I need to do a better job of that. I post some photography on social media, a little bit of it as I go on these trips. But the aquarium stuff, I need to do a better job of posting that or talking about it, getting that out there. I'll work on that. It's on my list. It's on my list.
Is it storming?
It is.
Storming
Do you see
where
it?
you are right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I saw the lightning.
Yeah. We've got bad thunderstorms coming through every night. The first 2 days, we were totally in thunderstorms. And we had tornado warnings. It was totally wiped out. And now you get the first half of the day that's clear, and then you get thunderstorms.
So the South has been in the news for these massive tornadoes and storms that have been coming through. And then, Sarah, you guys were just in the news because Red Rocks got hit with hail the other night. Did you see that?
Yeah, big hail. Large hail.
It's like injuries at a concert. It's weird.
We've had thunderstorms every night, too, which is kind of wild because we're like a high plains desert at the end of the Great Plains. But yeah, it's been crazy. It was thundering and storming just probably an hour before I got on.
Yeah, and we're in a drought.
Look at that. It's crazy.
My lawn is burnt up. It's only June and it's brown. So, anything else you guys want to talk about before we jet for the night?
I don't have anything.
Anything you want?
We solved all the world's problems.
We did.
We've solved poaching.
We crushed it.
We've got invert breeding. Remy's donating $30 million.
Hope in the hobby. We're crushing it.
Killing it.
Sarah, where can people find all the info about Butterfly Pavilion?
Yeah, so you can go to www.butterflies.org. Not sure how we got that name. Somebody was really on it early on in the 1990s, and learn about all the cool stuff we do at Butterfly Pavilion. Not just butterflies. It doesn't have a backbone. We are probably doing some sort of work with it. And you can also visit a lot of zoos and aquariums. Most of their money comes from guest visitation. So if you want to be supporting these research and conservation efforts, go to your local zoo or aquarium. It's really helpful and helps them spread their message.
And if you use the code RT, what up, Sarah? She'll give you a high five whenever you're there.
Absolutely. If you see me in the hallway and you say that, I will 100% high five you.
It will be met with a 90% alcohol spray.
Seems more of a torture than anything else.
Can't actually touch
you.
Anybody.
Must be secure in the biology.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Raj will get back to vacation. If you have any questions for either Sarah, for Raj, or myself, make sure to comment that in the comment section below if on YouTube. If you're listening in the car, you can always reach out on social media, on Instagram or on YouTube or TikTok, wherever you love to social your media. Remember to use the code RT10 when you grab an ICP test at icpanalysis.com. And guys, enjoy. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.
Adios.